And my name is Karina Acri Paez, and I'm from Telejaguar Chicano Media Collective. And tonight we plan to talk about the crisis of missing and murdered women and how the media plays a role in who gets coverage and who doesn't. And
Karina, can you hear me now?
yes, perfectly.
Yay! Success.
Yay. Okay.
I want to just apologize to everyone very quickly, as you know, and thank you for stepping in, Karina. I appreciate you so much. You know that. But I just wanted to, I'm still navigating this whole YouTube vlog casting thing. I'm still learning things and I'm working it out. And I don't know. I want to thank all you guys for your patience and rocking on me with this journey as we learn and discover and uncover things and try to think in new perspectives that we've never thought of before, you know? So, all right, please continue. Introduce yourself, Karina, please.
Thank you. So I am Karina Acri Paez, and I am from Telejaguar Chicano Media Collective. We're a collective that's been around for a couple years, but our members have extensive experience in building independent media platforms. Myself, I've been involved in that since Standing Rock, and kind of a broad bio for myself. I would say that I've been involved in a number of social justice and political campaigns, including 1 million missing and murdered Indigenous women, No DAPL, which you'll remember from No Dakota Access Pipeline. Also, a lot of work in election integrity and in building independent media platforms.
Right.
And so professionally, I've been working in the field of immigration law for 20 years. So that's kind of a combo of my background.
You are so amazing.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. No, I feel the same way about you. I'm so glad that we get to chat today about something that's so important and hopefully shed some light on what's going on here.
I know, right? I don't know. I'm just we talked about it behind the scenes, and I think we're both weary of the same argument regarding racial disparity and reporting of missing women or missing persons, period, in the media. But tonight we're focusing on women and girls, right?
Yes.
So,
and also maybe Two-Spirit or trans people.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. We can add trans people, but you know, there's also something political about that, which I know from Black spaces, because all right, so I know you're familiar with femicide, and we'll get into that later, because part of everything that's happening when these women and girls go missing and they turn up dead, those are numbers to the count of femicide in the United States. Something that needs to be politicized and something that needs to be forefront and center in terms of legislation and protecting women and girls, because it is essentially a hate crime, no? I would think so.
I agree. Right? Yes. Hate crime. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So, but in that regard, I know in the Black community, when, and this is slightly off topic, what I've noticed is that, and this is no disrespect to my trans sisters out there, but the amount of cis Black women that were murdered, whether it was by means of domestic violence or, you know, sex work or general hate, is the numbers are staggering. I don't even have them all because they're underreported, but I can tell you this much, right? That's a big problem. I can tell you this much: the number of Black women killed in domestic violence situations at the hands of their male partners is, I think it's like 300 times higher than Black men who have been killed by the police. So it's a public health crisis in this community. Wow. And when I say, like, you know, with trans women that were murdered, even though I think that's underreported too, the last number I got from last year, it was a few dozen versus nearly 2,000 cis women. But nobody wants to talk about it. I think politically, Black trans women do have more political leverage because it's hot right now.
Right.
Whereas Black women who are cis do not have that same level of agency, which even though, you know, like death is death, murder is murder, crime is crime, it's bad either way. You look at it, you know, victims are victims, and my heart goes out to all, right? And we shouldn't have to even look at it within this context, but it's true. You know?
Yeah, I would agree with you. We have to acknowledge the role that politics plays in who gets attention and who gets coverage, and that's one of the many levels I think we're going to probably get deeper into.
Absolutely.
Tonight.
Yep, that's where we're going tonight. It's not your typical crybaby conversation over here. We're going deep.
I was so impressed with you, Kelly, when we were starting out. You said, "I'm looking at this angle," and I said, "Oh, okay, we're going to the level that is not being spread all over mainstream media right now. Even in the conflicts, you know, in the conflicts as to why is this happening." I like that we're going above and beyond just pointing out the racial disparity. We're going to go further than that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal, you know. So as everybody knows, this topic is hot right now because of Gabby Petito. I think everybody knows at this point, in case you don't, in case you've been living under a rock and haven't been inundated with her story. She's a young woman. What is she, like 22 years old or something like that? What was she? 22?
Yes, I think she's in her early to mid 20s. Yeah.
Right. I remember when I first heard the story, it hit me because she's close to my daughter's age. So it's like, yeah, you know. But so her story is she basically went on a cross-country trip with her boyfriend. And he ended up going back to Florida. They lived in Florida, right? I think so. Oh, see how much I'm paying attention? So they lived in Florida.
Big picture, big picture.
Big picture, right? They lived in Florida, and he showed up driving her van back to their home by himself. So everybody was like, where the hell is Gabby? And he was like, I don't even know. So he didn't even cooperate with police. He got a lawyer, and the lawyer advised him not to speak. And the next thing we know, this dude is missing now too. He's on the run. And I don't know if anybody can display a level of guilt at its highest degree, it is that dude right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think he would have sat still if the media didn't really go so hard on this story, because now everybody has eyes on him. So he has to hide.
Right. It smells like the Lacey Peterson case. Remember when he took off and dyed his hair? Yeah. Headed for the border?
Yep. That was a crazy case. That was a crazy case. And you know, you know what? The only reason I think Lacey Peterson got burned was because she was pregnant. Wasn't she? Which made the whole thing heinous. Like, dude, how could you do
she
that?
She was about to give birth. Actually, she had the nursery set up. They'd had the baby shower. I mean, she was like ready to deliver any day now. So she was heavily pregnant. And goes missing while he is on a fishing trip, and then he comes back and got lawyers up right away as soon as the media got a hold of it.
Then he dyes his hair and splits.
Yeah.
But so that's the story of Abby, and this is something I want to make clear right now, as I told Karina earlier, is that the only problem I have with this dialogue regarding her case is everyone trying to be like, well, what about this person? Well, what about that person? This young lady didn't ask to get killed. She didn't ask to be the springboard of racial political discourse and disparity in who has value and who doesn't, as perceived by both law enforcement and the media. She didn't ask for that. All she did was take a trip with her boyfriend and didn't come home. That's what happened to her. So in no means do I want to admonish her or, tarnish her name. She was a kid. And it's very tragic. Whatever happened to her was tragic, you know? But I think we really need to analyze this deeply and comprehensively and really look at the disparity. Because you know what? The media doesn't really report all white women with this intensity as they do you know, versus other races and cultures. You know what I mean?
Yes. And if you want to talk about an example of that now, I have one, or if you want to get further into framing the dialogue, whatever you'd like.
Well, I mean, you know what? Let's dial it back a little bit, and maybe you can talk to us about what you know in regards to missing and murdered Indigenous women, and so that we can get those numbers, so that people can understand how it's not just a black and white issue. It goes further than that and deeper than that. I wish we could have numbers for Asian women too, you know, but I don't.
Thank you.
Numbers are very low, but
thank you. I know. Yes, because you know, you touched on a great point. It's a you know, we're looking and researching, and you can spend hours on the internet, and you'll come up with you know, you'll come up with a bunch of numbers that have all these caveats, you know, and how they're gathering statistical data, and then you know, on top of that, I should back up a bit and clarify again to everyone that MMIW, when I'm referencing MMIW, that is referring to the movement for 1 million missing and murdered Indigenous women. And that applies to, and from that perspective, we're not looking at colonial borders in North America. We're looking at Mexico, because, you know, in Juarez, we have about a graveyard of about 5,000 missing women along the border there. And there's another story there, but in the US and in Canada. So, and the nationwide crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit relatives is also a nationwide data crisis, really, because, you know, so many of these efforts to illuminate the scope and the nature of the problem are, you know, cut short by the lack of reliable data. And that's, of course, because of the structural forces that also determine which cases are getting attention. And so I will start with a very old statistic that kind of kicked off a broader study of MMIW. For example, in 2016, there were 5,712 cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women reported, but only 116 of those were logged into the Department of Justice database. So the rest of the data is being collected, you know, largely by activists and, you know, the national, the Urban Institute, Urban Indian Institute, statistical quandary, and started launching their own investigation in 2017 because, you know, the data was so old. You know, 5,700 is a, you know, you can imagine with, you know, how many cases didn't go reported or were misclassified as runaways. And, you know, stereotypes also have a lot to do with these statistics, especially for Indigenous women, because you have the stereotype of the drunk Indian, you know. So one of the, you know, biggest things that people complain about when they attempt to report these cases to law enforcement is that people will dismiss them and say, oh, she's probably drunk, she'll probably show up tomorrow. You know, those are the kinds of things that people are told when they try to call police. So we're looking at the first slide that Kelly brought up. And this is a breakdown of the top 10 states with the highest number of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls cases. And so we start with New Mexico is number 1, Washington State's number 2, Arizona is 3, Alaska's 4, Montana's 5, California's 40. California's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th, Nebraska 7th place, Utah 8th place, Minnesota place, and Oklahoma is in 10th place. And so what is the corresponding material circumstances that produce these high numbers in these states? Well, it's a number of things, but mostly it's a large number of Indigenous women and reservations. You know, that's what we're looking at. And this also correlates to the phenomenon of man camps, which I'm not sure if many of your listeners may be familiar with. And what man camps generally refers to is kind of the temporary working guys towns, you know, for along pipelines and things like that. And so the adjacent nature of those man camps are along pipelines drastically and very obviously correlates to large numbers of MMIW, because when you have man camps, you have, number one, high drug abuse, two, a lot of women, female, trafficking of women,
Yes.
Rape, beatings, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so that is the correlation there, and that's why pipelines are not just an issue for the environment, but it's also
Right.
for death.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now I didn't even know that. I only thought about the pipelines being an ecological issue, but when you put it within that context, when I think about the workers, and I'm sure they're underpaid, you know what I mean, and male testosterone all over the place, and
they're surrounded by guys,
workers and surrounded by guys and sex workers and sex traffickers, and plenty of places to make a body go missing if need be.
Yes.
Huh? I'd imagine.
Yes. And then you couple with that, there is a framework of laws that don't talk to each other. And what I mean by it, so they don't work together. And what I mean by that is, for example, there are rules about not being able to report a tribal member to the tribal police. You can only report, the rules are changing, but kind of loosely, what stopped all of these cases, it basically gave non-Native men a get out of jail free card, because women were not allowed to report perpetrators that were not members of the tribe or on the reservation. So that would go to another jurisdiction with police. Well, the police don't pick up the cases because, they don't make them a priority. So you have layer upon layer of legal frameworks of systems that don't talk to each other. And this is not an accident. It's by design. It's the product of hundreds of years of colonization and the structure of legal systems that is intended to disenfranchise and disempower the other. And so that's very much reflected in the data. This next slide shows that on some reservations, Native women are murdered at a rate of 10 times the national average. And so I think what the American mind is going to look at this statistic and say, oh, wow, there's a lot of Native men killing Native women on reservations. And that's not the case. When you look at the data, it's the far majority, and I mean, in the top 90s, the majority of the perpetrators are non-Native. And that's why they don't have any follow-ups on the case, because, it occurs, and then the tribal police can't do anything because it's out their jurisdiction. The other regular police aren't going to do anything because they stay called the tribal police. That kind of thing. And when you're talking about disempowered and disenfranchised and people that are in deep poverty for generations by design, they are left powerless, really. So
would you say that similar to, I guess, any other community in America, do Indigenous communities still suffer from the same patriarchal oppression? Do the women of those communities suffer from it?
Yes, very much, because that patriarchy has been passed down, through generational trauma. For example, we have an entire generation of Native children that were literally stolen out of their homes and then forced into boarding schools, and sometimes at gunpoint. Like there's, the law said they had the right to take them. So people would come at gunpoint, and have very horrific memories for entire family members of babies being screaming and mommy screaming and being taken away from them. And if the parents tried to get them back, then they would have the threat of being sent to jail. And some parents did go to jail in attempts to get them back. So what happened at those boarding schools is you have gross sexual violence, all manner of beatings and torture. And that whole generation turned in onto itself. And what I mean by that is they take that trauma and those practices, and they are, come home as very damaged individuals, and then they continue to perpetrate that in their own communities, So there is a gross, sexual violence and incest and beatings and all those things that come from the colonial systems, including patriarchy, is now saturated into reservation communities because it's what was shoved down their throat,
Right.
by force. And
Right.
a lot of times traumatized people, they go on to seek out situations that or people that re-traumatize them, and that's like that's kind of the human condition. I think that's one of the byproducts that we see from trauma.
Yeah, you know what? That sounds very similar to what the Black community faces in this country. It's actually dead on similar. We also keep reliving our ancestors' trauma and perpetuating it, and we are self-cannibalizing.
Yes.
To the point that we're not even seeing the importance of community and family. It's like literally every man for himself, and the weak shall fall. And the weak usually being women and children. And it's disheartening. It's scary. And I don't really know how to turn it around at this point. When I look at the numbers of Black women who have gone missing, I think the number's at 64,000. It's holding steady. Those are open cases. I think it should be more at this point. But like I said, everything is so underreported, especially when it comes to law enforcement. They don't care. Recently I found out that one of my ex-boyfriends might have harmed a woman. It's possible. I'm pointing fingers because I know what he is, but when she was found, the police really didn't do anything about it because she had a history of sex work. So they chalked it up as just another dead hooker.
Right.
Even
She's
though
disposable.
she's disposable, exactly. Even though she hadn't been in that industry for a considerable amount of time. She was straight up L7 at that point, a square. So there was really, they just didn't bother at all. And I think about her and I'm wondering, well, I don't have to wonder. I know how many other Black women and brown women are going underreported when they're missing or when they turn up deceased.
Right. Yes, and also, we know because we are from our lived experience that a lot of times, a lot of the perpetrators are law enforcement.
Absolutely.
The law enforcement are raping our women. Law enforcement are kidnapping and trafficking our women. Law enforcement is profiting off of the death and trafficking of our women. So, that is another layer of corruption that makes the judicial system, not very lucrative and, or not very effective, I should say, in addressing the issue because they will protect themselves. They have a stake in it and they literally have a financial stake in it because they're involved in human trafficking.
It's true. It's true. They absolutely are involved in human trafficking. And I don't think that's limited to Black and brown women. I have a feeling that a lot of these underreported white women and girls are roped in by law enforcement too. They're a part of it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. The value, again, what is the value of womanhood? And unfortunately, young white women and girls are the biggest target because they get the most money in that regard in terms of human and sex trafficking, don't they?
Right.
So
I believe that's correct. Yes.
It is correct. And that makes them a bigger target. I actually have a graph up here broken down by race.
Okay, great.
This is a good comment right here. Hold on. Let me just stop the screen for a second and share another one. Oh, this is so much fun. Let me see. Okay,
We are live.
We are live, finally. I don't know if that's the right one. Let me see what I have up here. Oh, no. That's the missing disparity between men and women in this country. And oddly
Okay.
enough, women under the age of 21, which is women and girls, slightly higher than boys and young men. But over 21, there are actually more men missing, which I found really interesting. You know, but I don't know why they're missing. Hold on, let me see if I can grab the other graphic. That's not the one I wanted to share yet. Okay. I'm going to put up Miss Andrea's.
Oh, we have comments. Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yay.
Yeah, if you go to live comments, they're there. But Miss Jackson says, it sounds like most poor or poverty-stricken communities, not just Black or Native people. You are absolutely right. That is probably the number one factor in underreporting, crappy law enforcement investigations, no media attention. Nobody's going to care about the poor, chubby, brown-haired girl from a trailer park who went missing, you know?
Indeed.
It's tragic, but that's what it is. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Let me go ahead and find this daggone graphic. Hopefully I can get it right. I need to do better. Like, I think I should probably do some like PowerPoint presentations or something, because it seems like the easier way to do it. I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah, I do those. I do. PowerPoint works fine for.
Same one. Dang it. Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. Stop that.
That's okay.
But yeah, you think PowerPoint can work? I can't even get my intro video to play without messing up. So I have so much to figure out.
Well, that's why we have to practice. So let's practice again.
Okay. I'm so here for practicing again. The same one keeps popping. You know what? I'm gonna do this. Goodbye. That'll make life easier because we already saw that graphic. So we're gonna share screen. Blah blah blah. Boom. There we go. There it is.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to read it because I know it might be very small for people. But currently, as of 2021, there are 321,859 white people missing in America. Okay. And of course, right after that is Black people, 182,548. Now, when we look at it per capita, I think in the Black community, that's like extremely alarming since we only make up 13%, as opposed to the broader majority with less than double our amount.
Okay. And I wonder if the white data also includes, because you know how sometimes they put quote unquote Hispanic as white?
That could be a possibility too.
So maybe they're conflating the data.
It's possible they're conflating the data. Totally. That's a great point. We get to Asian. It says 10,776 Asians are missing. And Indigenous, 9,575. They put Indian. I want to fight them. So tacky. But 9,575. And given the populations of it's still staggering, if you ask me. Unknown. I don't know what unknown. I guess that might be mixed race. I'm not sure what unknown is supposed to be. But you know, it's there, but they make up about 19,000 of missing cases, unknown race people. So there's that.
At least they didn't say something else, right? Like something else.
I think I might have been a little bit comfortable. You know what? Something else is funny. Other.
Yeah.
Them folks. Folks, you know. But yeah, so it's interesting to see. I don't know how, like, again, you know how everything is underreported. And even whatever numbers we get from legitimate statistics, I don't think they're accurate. And as you mentioned, you know, in the category of white people going missing, they could conflate numbers with Hispanics that identify as white. I see you, Floridian Cubans.
Yeah, and most people, you know, when they don't have a proper choice, they will pick whatever like the census used to say, white, including Hispanic. You know what I mean? So everybody's like, oh
Right.
yeah, I'm white on paper, so they can't say they discriminate against me because I'm white. But it's
Right,
like, so
right.
there's politics in that too. But
Yeah, the lines are very, very blurred,
yeah,
aren't they? You
yes,
know,
I
but
agree.
so it's hard to really get the numbers on it, but we can tell by the personal accounts from people and the stories that they share with us. That's why independent media is so important. That's why social media is really important, because we
Exactly.
wouldn't even find out about half of these stories if family members weren't crying about their missing loved ones, you know?
Right.
And then
Right.
from that point, we can decide where to take it or who will pick it up. Now,
Right.
in regards to like the racial disparity in media reporting, and Gabby Petito, and who was the other chick that you brought up when we were inboxing today?
Oh, Natalie Holloway.
Natalie Holloway.
Yeah.
Can you go over her story again for me?
Sure I can. Sure I can.
Okay.
So she was a graduating high school senior, a kind of the stereotypical American beauty kind of look, like Gabby, blonde, blue eyes, very attractive, young, petite. And she was on a senior trip to, I think it was in Barbados. And she had been to a club with some of her friends, and then she eventually departed from them and went off with a guy named Uren Vandersloot, whose dad was a judge.
Mm,
Um, and there, yes, the dad was like, a political celebrity. And she went off with a guy named Uren Vandersloot and two of his friends. One of them, they were two brothers, I think. One of them was the driver of the car. Jordan Uren Vandersloot was kind of like the one who was supposed to be maybe flirting with Natalie or something like that. So
mhm,
they all went to a beach, and they all said they were drinking.
mhm.
They said that at one point Natalie passed out and became unconscious, and
Okay.
supposedly they freaked out and left her on the beach.
Oh my
Well,
Lord.
yeah, and then they came back, like went to their hotel. Yes, there's Natalie. Thank you.
Yeah, I had to find
And
it.
yeah, and then so they then went to their back to their life and didn't say anything. Well, then, instead of reporting anything, they just kind of thought they would ignore it all and nothing would happen to them.
Right.
So they of course they lied, changed their stories a million times. The father of Uren Vandersloot, who was protecting his son at every turn, was stopping judicial proceedings. The family in Barbados, they didn't want to investigate properly, so it was largely the family members, the mother of Natalie and her father, who organized people and were down there searching. And then they got money from the U.S. government to assist with searches and that kind of thing. And so there was,
What? That
it turned
actually
into,
happened?
yes, they got it. It turned
Oh,
into like an
wow.
international missing persons case. And and this was, as you touched on before, when we were talking about the subject, this became, Dateline every single night. The update on Natalie Holloway.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
her body was never found, but it kind of, and Uren Vandersloot and actually he went on to murder another woman, and he did get convicted of it this time. And so he's in a jail in a South American country. I forgot what
Mhm.
country. I think is where he committed the murder of the second woman. I think Brazil, or I'm
But
not
do you
sure
know
what
what
country.
ethnicity that woman was? Or maybe we can look her up.
Yes, well, she's kind of popularly, I mean, for purposes of a Google search, I would say
Okay.
Uren Vandersloot's second victim,
Okay.
or,
I
but
gotta figure out how to spell it. Don't even tell me. I'll figure it out.
with a J, Uren.
Okay. Oh snap! I spelled it right. Okay.
Oh, right.
Bet.
Yeah. So, this was like big money for US media. It was, you saw they kept flashing pictures of Natalie and her vacation trip and her cap and gown. And it was a very emotional story too, because like she's at the pinnacle of her success. She's about to graduate, and go off to college, and then she's missing on the trip. So it was, a very good story for
Mhm.
the media. to bring in a lot of ratings, basically. And it turned into miniseries, like a documentary, kind of a few-part documentary, and tons of media was made about it, dramatizations.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a huge. I mean, there's Urine ended up, like I said, he ended up in a jail now for killing a second woman.
Yeah, she was
He did
Peruvian. I have a
Peruvian.
picture.
Thank you.
She is
Yeah,
Peruvian.
yeah,
She's
and he
very
did it.
indigenous. Yep.
Yeah, and she he did it in a hotel room,
Mm-hmm.
very sloppily, and probably because he felt so comfortable about the first time, that he get away with it, or I don't even know if that was the first time, but um, he did end up getting prosecuted and convicted for it, and so, but he is like, unfortunately, because his dad's got so much money, he's like the king of the prison. He's got a private cell for himself. He got a crazy woman to marry him, so he gets conjugal visits.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah,
And
so
they
he's
keep
like,
winning while these women are over here losing their lives. I'm trying to
yeah,
find her name, but I'm going to pull up her image.
thank you.
Yeah, totally. Okay. I think her name is Flores is her last name. It's so sad. Ugh, so sad. Bear with me as I get rid
Oh,
of.
sure, no problem.
I didn't mean to say get rid of Miss Holloway. That didn't even
No,
come
no.
out. That did not come out right. Okay. Share screen. There's got to be an easier way to do this. I feel like part of me wants to just record or pre-record everything. Her last name is Flores. If anybody in the chat can get her full name, that would be amazing. But I believe her last name is Flores, and this is his second victim that he went on to kill because he got away with killing his it was his girlfriend, yes. No, they were hanging out.
Natalie? Yeah, they just met at a bar that night.
He's a psycho. Ugh.
Yeah. So he's like the king of the prison. He brags about having beers and playing poker. And,
really? That's what he gets to do.
That's what he gets to do. Yep.
Oh my God. It's infuriating.
Yeah.
All right. So if anybody gets her name up, please type it in the chat because we'd like to honor her. Let's see what anyone got. Stephanie Flores Ramirez.
Yes, Stephanie Flores, yes.
Thank you, identity withheld. Stephanie Flores Ramirez. Let's just put it up there for a second so that she can get her respect and her dignity, despite the fact that the dude that took her life is still breathing right now and braggadocious about his deeds and his darkness. So, screw that dude. Yeah. But going back to Gabby Petito, in regards to the racial disparity, I hear a lot of people saying things like, especially in the Black community, oh, they never talk about us or blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that's entirely true because, hold on a second. I'm going to take Natalie down for a minute so I can find everything. Okay. Because there was one case, and I'm sure a lot of you remember, that was national and huge. And it still carries on, and people are still looking to see what's happening to her. But you guys remember Relisha Rudd? If you remember Relisha Rudd, put a 1 in the chat. If you don't, I will remind you and break down her story. She was from the DC area. I believe she was like 5 years old. Hang on. Let me find her photograph for you.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yep. I just had her picture up briefly while I was trying to find. This is her. Yeah, that's her.
Right.
All right, there's Relisha. Now, Relisha was living but for all intents and purposes, Relisha is the exact opposite that you'd expect to get media attention. Her mother was poor. They were living in a homeless shelter at the time of her disappearance. She had other siblings, lived in the hood in DC in that shelter. The man who was last seen with her worked at the shelter and formed a friendship with her mother. And he would often take Relisha out alone to do things like, we're going to go out for ice cream, or we're going to do this. Obviously, he was grooming this child for something else. And he was the last person to be seen with her. Her mother knows what happened. And a lot of people believe that her mother actually trafficked Relisha to this dude in exchange for gifts, money, and favors from him, right? But we'll never know, because as the heat started coming down on this guy, he committed suicide. Until this day, Relisha Rudd's body has not been found. Now, her case got tons of media attention. And I was glad that it happened, but it struck me as odd that people were interested in this, you know, out of all the cases of all the missing girls out here, regardless of their race or where they're from. And the reason it struck me, that's when it made me understand, is that media is perverted. And I think they were selling the idea of this little girl possibly being sexually molested to get viewership, because people are interested in that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And as jacked up as it sounds, it sells. It's what gets numbers. It gets hits. It gets views. It gets ratings, you know? And I'm not sure if it was because people actually really cared about her as much as they were interested in the details of the story and finding out how dark it really was. You know what I mean? So does that make sense? Karina, you still with me? Uh-oh. Did I lose you? Well, that's how I feel about Relisha. Anyway, but the fact that she was able to get national attention, they were able to, the family or her loved ones, I don't even know what to call it. I know she has a stepfather or something who's been really heavy with her case. Karina, you there?
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. It happened.
Okay.
But I think the perversion of the details of Relisha's case is what attracted the media to it, not necessarily because she was a missing Black girl from DC from a homeless shelter, because by and large, people don't care about that. And I see the same thing. America's weird with their freaking odd perversions when it comes to youth and this they have when these things happen. But go ahead, please say.
Oh, sorry. I think along the same vein, there was another really popular murder of a child beauty pageant star named Jonbenet Ramsay.
Girl, I got her picture here too.
Yes. And that's, you know, exactly what you pointed to. It's like people want the sick fantasy details of, you know, how many men have fantasized about children in beauty pageants, unfortunately. You know, that's linked to the whole child pornography thing. So.
And the sex trafficking thing. You know, it's all within the same vein. And the media, I honestly believe, is subconsciously selling the sexuality of missing and murdered girls and women. And the younger they are and the more they adhere to a beauty standard, the more ratings they get. So I don't know if that's sick on the media's part or sick on society's part for latching themselves onto these stories as deeply as it. Jonbenet still has movies made about her, and it's been like, what, 30 years she's been dead now?
I know. They just interviewed her brother a couple weeks ago.
Oh, Lord. Oh, man.
And there's another example of this, if we've got a minute.
Sure.
There was a case in 2003 that kind of illustrates the point with undeniable clarity, I think. That's Jessica Lynch. She was a U.S. Army soldier who was taken by Iraqi forces, as a POW in 2003. And she actually condemned the media when she was found later, but she was kidnapped with two other female soldiers. One was Lori Piestewa, and the other one was Shoshana Johnson. And Piestewa was actually killed in the attack. She was a Native woman, and the other was a Black female. And Jessica Lynch was kind of like the Gabby type, as in terms of physical appearance. She kind of looks like Natalie Holloway, like kind of blonde, blue-eye, petite type of thing. And she spoke out after she was rescued, and she says, "I don't understand why the media made me a legend when the real heroes were my soldiers that saved me." So she pointed this out, as a victim.
Yeah, she did. I'm going to pull up her photo now. And the media doesn't care about that part. That's
Right.
not the part that sells,
Right. Is it like a damsel in distress type of fascination? They want a image that fits well with that kind of thing.
You know what? That's an excellent question. All right. So this is going to sound really strange. So you got to bear with me for a second. Okay. But, I like to follow true crime stories, serial killer stories. The psychology behind how people function fascinates me in that regard, But I remember there was one documentary that I was watching about a serial killer. And I want to say it's Ted Bundy, but it might not be him. I can't really remember who it was. But he had the same, I don't think it was Ted Bundy. Well, no, it might have been Ted Bundy. But they asked why he only went after a specific look of women. And usually they were white women. Most often brunettes. I don't think most of them were blondes. But why white women? And you know what he said? And it might have been Ted Bundy, might not. He said, because white girls look like they taste the best.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that chilling? Isn't that chilling?
It's horrifying.
And this is a killer that, was also a necrophiliac and ate the flesh of his victims.
Oh my God.
And when he looks at them, he sees, clean and pure. But I think there is something that's bubbling beneath the surface of, this social experiment called America, where they've not, relieved themselves of this idea of this darkness when it comes to sexual assault and death and this bloodlust that they have for their own women. You know what I mean? That the colonists have for their own women. The history that they have with women here in this country is disgusting. And I think that this is part of the reason why these girls have so much value. It's not necessarily because they represent the best of them, but I think it's something darker and far more insidious. I don't know. Am I making sense at all? Because I'm over here just thinking while I'm speaking at the same time.
No, I understand what you mean. It's kind of like their own stereotypes turn against them, in a very evil way. The pure white woman kind of thing, and why that would be more appealing to someone with, to a sociopath. Is it more thrilling, for them to, and some people target the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, definitely.
And some don't, but it's probably
I don't know. I know that I really went dark with it because I'm really trying to understand it, but I don't think maybe it's a mixed bag of emotions, That's why I wanted to have one of my white female friends on here that are so not Karen in the slightest bit and extremely insightful to give her take on what it is about white people and this weird lust that they have for youth and these blonde girls and why does it sell so big? And what do you think of it from the context of her own community and her experiences? You know what I mean? But unfortunately, she couldn't make it because she had some family things to handle. But maybe next time we can get her. But you know, I think it's something insidious and very weird. You know, how they look at these girls is they're I don't know. I don't feel like it's sympathy, but it seems more like a bloodlust is the only word that keeps coming into my head. You know, you take this the purest thing that you can possibly get in their eyes, and they feed off of these stories where that purest thing is defiled. You know, and then why does it turn into big numbers for like corporations and stuff and advertisers? Like I don't understand this at all, you know. But yeah, can we get into that part? Because I know I'm going left field and I probably upset some people with some of the things that I just said. But let's talk about media and advertising and how girls like Gabby make the numbers tick in the media. Okay.
Well, I liked the question that you posed about, is it because the society is corrupt, or is it because the media is corrupt and sick? You know, and I think it's because part of the media's job and is they're trained to know, like you said, what is going to spur an emotional response and an interest. And so they play off that. They heighten those elements when they're sharing the story, you know, and you know, who is digesting the media, who is consuming the media, and who is you know, who's running away with the fat pockets at the end of the day after they've run, you know, these stories on CNN and other mainstream media. They want something that's going to blow the headlines up, you know. So who is the public going to care more about? What kind of face is the public going to care more about? What will elicit more sympathy? You know, they're not going to call Gabby a drunk Indian.
No, they're not. And they're not going to call Gabby some Black prostitute, right? So you're right about that, you know. But isn't it crazy that it takes this image of purity to elicit that kind of sympathy, you know? But you're right. What they do is, I know in advertising and marketing, it goes so much deeper than a lot of people realize, and they do tons of studies and millions upon millions of dollars are poured into understanding what people respond to as being, you know, more sympathetic towards, or being enraged about, or whatever. So there are metrics behind this reasoning of why Gabby is the forefront right now in the news, as opposed to anyone else that's missing right now, you know? So, yeah, there are definitely metrics involved.
That is I wonder what our viewers think about that.
What?
That's something for our viewers also to think about when we finish the program. I just mean, like, what is the reason for the disparity? What is the fascination with
what is the fascination?
The ultimate pure victim or something?
You know, and it's outside of the whole bloodlust thing that I brought up, there's also the this symbol of purity, like Matt Cedillo. Ain't that your boy?
Yes. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for coming out, Matt. Thanks for supporting the show. But there is that symbol of purity that, you know, the rest of us, you know, Black and brown people and Asian people in this world, not just this country, where we look at this angelic archetype of the blonde curly hair, the soft blonde hair, and the pale skin and the blue eyes as being the closest to God that we can ever get to, you know? And in some respects, we have different religions that actually do that, you know, with their caste systems and all of that integrated into society. But I would wager to guess that, you know, Jonbenet Ramsay next to Alicia Rudd, Jonbenet is closer to God in that white supremacist fantasy of religion and being sanctified that they've built for us. So maybe that's the appeal. And I would even say that in a Black household, they might veer towards being more concerned about Jonbenet Ramsay because subconsciously she's closer to the image of Christ that's been ingrained in our heads for like years, right? So
yeah, like Matt saying here, white equals innocent.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and it plays out in all kinds of ways, and it just goes to show, seeing why, certain people have more value. And it's not all of them. Like I said earlier in the show, if Gabby was 51 years old and a little bit overweight and out of shape, thinning hair, needs to dye her roots or whatever from a trailer park, she would get no burn right now because nobody cares about that. She's not close to God. Not like this young, pure,
attractive,
Aryan favoring, young lady that she is, so I don't know. But yeah, maybe we figured it out or maybe we didn't. I don't know. We're just talking. But let's see. Let's see what here. Thanks for coming through, X, he says, or she. I've heard a handful of white women talk about white sex slavery. It exists. On a broader scale too, like those chicks that go out to Dubai, they love white women out there in those wealthy circles and whatnot that are involved in sex trafficking. And it's a lot, but I don't want to go there right now because it's a lot. That's a whole different topic for a whole different show, but we can talk about it one day.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking is, kind of because of what capitalism does on a very base level is dehumanize people into a commodity. Everyone is a commodity. And so when someone is viewed as a commodity, they are no longer, the purpose becomes to generate profits for you. So the dehumanization of victims of these crimes, it supports the capitalist system because there are endless profits to be made by eliciting strong emotional responses from people. And when you commodify a body and a look, then that leaves up unrestricted avenues for profiting off of that kind of thing, and all the reasons that we see some people amplified and some people not amplified, just as you mentioned.
It's a brand. It's a brand.
Right, exactly.
It's a brand and a product, and unfortunately, it does have like a two-prong effect that I think subconsciously works on BIPOC communities, and that is the fact that we're constantly being told inadvertently and subconsciously that we don't matter in the grand scheme of things, that these people are important. So it's something really deep to think about. There are different levels to why this is done. And, I think a lot of people make the mistake of believing that things happen just because, the media just picked this up just because she's a white girl. No, that there's so much more behind that. They know what they're doing. And it goes far deeper. It even goes deeper than advertising, And like Miss Andrea said, it's a control tool. The media is our main source of programming. And you're absolutely right about that.
Right. It reinforces that there are some cases that matter more than others.
Absolutely. It does reinforce that some cases matter more than others, which tells us subconsciously that some people matter more than we do. And that doesn't help for the collective mental health and anything that we need to be empowered behind. You know, this constant reminder of what is more important. You know, it's very sneaky. It's very, all of this is very insidious.
Yes,
you know?
I agree.
Okay, I'm going to put the link here for a moment to see if anybody wants to hop on and give their 2 cents. We're going to stay on for about another 10 minutes. Is that cool with you, Karina?
Sure, I'd love to.
Okay, all right, cool. So the link is in the chat if anybody wants to hop on and give their 2 cents about the value of womanhood and media and, I don't know, pretty much anything that we've spoken about this evening. Hop on and, you know, let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody has a case that they'd like to mention that throws some light on this kind of thing,
that would be wonderful. And also, you know what we should do? And I didn't even think about doing this before, but it's important that we mention we can't look at mainstream media to tell our stories, period, right?
Right.
So it's important that we use whatever voices and platforms that we have to tell the stories in our communities that need to be told, right? Because that's the only way to fight this. You got to just be like, you know what? I'm not dealing with MSNBC anymore. I don't care what's happening on CNN or Fox. It has nothing to do with my community. I know I'm being programmed. I know my brain is being rearranged right now. Let me reach out to these independent sources from the community that actually care about my life and the things that I'm going through, right? So what I should have done, which I didn't think of doing this before, but I might make a little short video listing organizations that specialize in, well, obviously Indigenous missing, MMIW, Black and missing, Black femicide, and anything else that I can find and think of, so that you guys can go explore, support, share the word, look around, see what's there, and support, you know, people that look like you if that's what you're so compelled to do. You know, we don't have to keep leaning on the mainstream media to make it happen.
Right. No, I'd be happy to drop some links in the comments.
Okay, cool. You know what? You could drop some in the matter of fact, you know what I'll do? Behind the scenes, send me the links in our chat, right?
Okay.
And then when I edit the description in the video, I'll put them in the description.
Sure.
So that
and I'll also
for everybody.
Maybe link some sources for, you know, toolkits in your communities and what to do when this type of thing happens. And as well as ways to get involved if you're interested in amplifying people's stories or learning more about it. MMIW.
Excellent. Excellent. I would greatly appreciate that. All right. So it looks like we don't have anybody hopping on, sis.
Okay.
So we could cut our live stream tonight. Thank you so much for bearing with me and my technical difficulties.
No, Kelly, it was my pleasure.
I appreciate you. And
so
I'm
much
so
fun.
sorry I got weird and dark for a minute. But like, these are things that I think about, you know, it's like in the DNA with those folks. It gets weird and dark. And I think that's something I'll talk about on another show.
That's for the next show.
That's for the next show. For real. Okay. All right. So thank you, everybody, for coming out. Thank you so much, Karina. I love you to pieces. And
love you too.
We're out. And one. Thanks for dropping by the lab, y'all. You heard?
Good night.
Good night.